Hi, this is John Sifferman from physicalliving.com, and I've got Scott Sonnon here. I know a lot of my readers already know who Scott is, so I'm not going to introduce him again. I'll provide some info above this video. But today's interview is all about TAC-FIT and just some background information. And the goal of this interview is to help people figure out how to get started with TAC-FIT and maybe which program is best for them to get started with. So thank you for being here, Scott. I really appreciate it. So Scott, can you just tell us what is TAC-FIT and how did it originate?
The short story is that it's a 20-year initiative. About 15 years ago, I was both the coach for the U.S. Sambo team and for the U.S. police team. We tried to do our due diligence in studying the difference between police athletes and between amateur athletes, and what we discovered was basically that police athletes could perform more effectively at high intensity, yet they required much more significant recovery time in order to avoid pains and injuries. So once we had that data point, we had to back up and look at, well, what is actually going on in the tactical athletes and why is that leading to more accelerated pains and injuries with those in that vocation, and not just police athletes, but also firefighters. So the data point led us on a trip of trying to evaluate what is the total sum stress load in an individual's life who has a job. Amateur athletes have the luxury of just kicking back and laying on the couch and doing absolutely nothing. And since they're rubbery little 20-somethings and teenagers, they can recover just by eating junk food. However, and that's not to say that a young athlete can't benefit from proper training.
I appreciate that, Scott.
But when you put on some years and you add on the stress of a job, and in the case of police and firefighters, it's a potentially lethal occupation, then the anticipation of those encounters and the stress that accumulates puts them over the edge, and they turn from stress to strain, and the training that they do in their daily life actually leads to accelerated injuries and even illnesses. We had to back engineer from that point of how do we schedule training in order to maximize recovery time, not just from a movement specific standpoint. We have to have mechanics that are specific to tactical performance, but we had to look at the recovery cycle so that we can keep the athlete safe and factor in the sum total stress. We didn't realize, and this was the ancillary discovery, we didn't realize that most people in Western civilization live at such an internal stress load that the tactical training actually applied to everyone.
Well, thanks. Now, a lot of people would like to know how TAC-FIT relates to CST. Is TAC-FIT like a subdivision of CST? Is it an outgrowth? Could you just for clarity's sake?
Well, TAC-FIT is a great recipe, and CST would be the formula for creating great recipes. Mm-hmm. TAC-FIT is a perfect self-contained example of applying the principles of CST in action to a particular group of individuals. We didn't realize that it applied much broader because stress applies to everyone. But there are other examples of CST within a self-contained system, like, for instance, ageless mobility, as one standing class for a particular demographic of people who live in civilization and become chair-shaped by the time they're 40 or 50. So you have a particular demographic, you address that through the CST formula, and you create a system. What we didn't realize is how many people were interested.
Right. So it would be accurate to say that TAC-FIT draws all the most valuable aspects of CST and applies them to a specific training purpose.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now, one of your TAC-FIT brochures defines tactical fitness, in part, this is part of the definition, as physical preparedness can be defined as the willingness and capacity to perform, improvise, or resolve a continuum of reality-based physical skills. In your own words, what is tactical fitness and how is it different from functional fitness?
Okay, that's a really good example. Okay, this gets into a theory. It's never going to be a provable theory. Mm-hmm. It's like the Paleolithic diet. No one will ever be able to prove it. However, there's a very compelling argument that the nervous system evolved and hasn't evolved for 100,000 years. We're the same as we were 100,000 years ago, basically. In that argument, our nervous system thrives most effectively from a genetic standpoint to be a hunter and gatherer. Our hunting and gathering skills and the pursuit of them stimulates our nervous system like no other thing. We haven't evolved to sit behind a desk. We haven't evolved for a keyboard or for thumb technology.
Dumb phones.
Yeah, I'm a technology geek. I absolutely love it. Mm-hmm. If you take the technology to its ultimate conclusion, it's not the accumulation of skills, but the accumulation of knowledge and how to distribute that knowledge. We haven't evolved physiologically to the point we've evolved from a conceptual standpoint. The digital age is much farther ahead than the neurological age. So, from a tactical perspective, or from a neurophysiological perspective, if we stimulate the nervous system in the pursuit of tactical-based movements, we're going to yield the greatest results in motor development. There's a strong push right now for animal movements, and there has been for martial arts for thousands of years. The attempt to replicate animal movements, it's impossible. It's basically like doing an impression. You can have a very compelling impression of another person, but you'll never render it. The same thing is true with animal movements. We don't move like an animal. We don't have the same joint articulation, and we don't have the same ecological context. So if I'm pursuing that prey, if I'm a grasshopper or a praying mantis, the articulation may look effective, but it doesn't stimulate the nervous system in the same way as if we were to move as other humans move. So the theory behind it is if we attempt to render the motor profile of a human's hunting and gathering skills, we're going to develop much faster than the array of, say, standing on a Swiss ball, balancing on a Swiss ball, trying to blow a didgeridoo, doing a SOTS press with a kettlebell. And I only use that example because it's true. It's true. So functional training, from its theoretical standpoint, is absolutely valid. It doesn't invalidate functional training. Functional training, its ultimate purpose was to maintain the functional balance of the human form. But it's become a menagerie of parlor tricks of, can I do this stunt? Sure, you can do it, but do you want to do it? It's like being a teenager and looking around. How fast can I hit a emergency brake turn? Sure, you can do it, but do you want to do it? So fitness shouldn't necessarily, it can be. You can do whatever you want with fitness. I don't judge, right? But if you want to stimulate the system in its longest and most effective run, then do it through the pursuit of hunting and gathering skills. When I say that, I don't necessarily mean that we have to regress, run out into the woods, and find some type of park where we can climb trees. That's fantastic. I love being outdoors. We can do it indoors. We can do it in an urban environment. We can do it in a gym setting. We can do it anywhere. There's no difference between the natural environment and the man-made environment. We are just as natural as everything else, except for plastic.
All right. So what keys would set TAC-FIT apart from other similar conditioning systems? Are there some major points, anything, for example, CrossFit or similar?
Well, it's fitness for a purpose. So if you have a purpose in mind, it's like sports-specific training. If my purpose is to culminate in performance on the football field, then all of my conditioning needs to lead up to that direction. It's not an adjunct to training. I don't just smack on fitness and say, well, if I become more fit, then I'm going to do better at my job or my sport. I have to be specifically prepared for that. The body doesn't know generalized adaptation. The cells do, but the muscles don't. Muscles only adapt to movement. So if I want to move better as a human, especially as a man, I need to move better tactically. And if you look at it from a sociological perspective or an anthropological perspective, men who move in different cultures, men who move more tactically, and I don't mean pieing a room, right? Mm-hmm. But carry themselves in a particular way. You know who's a schlep, and you know who that guy moves with power.
Yeah, I'm not messing with him.
I'm not messing with that guy. He may not have a day of martial art training, but you see a man move with confidence and grace, and you know,
I'll hit the neighbors.
Yeah, I'm fine. And that's the main point. Fitness for a purpose. So you have to orchestrate all of the protocols and all of the exercise selection and creation around that. Fitness for a purpose.
Okay. All right. Now, one of the TACFIT slogans is "Be more prepared than the challenges you face." How does TACFIT address this or incorporate it?
I learned this lesson early on in martial art, that you only get hurt in the direction you're not prepared for. So you only get hit by the thing you don't see coming. When it comes to your movement, you have to train outside of the buffer zone of your particular skill. So sport-specific training becomes too much of a delicate edge, where you only train that one movement pattern. You have to have a safety valve for when movements deviate from the expected. If you only train for one situation, you can't recover. And the whole point about tactical fitness is it's not merely the skills that you're preparing. It's recovering from when you make mistakes, from when you're surprised, from when you have errors or inefficiencies. How fast do you recover from them? That determines the victor.
Okay. Now, TACFIT was primarily designed for service people, military, firefighters, law enforcement, etc. These people have unpredictable, rigorous physical job requirements. How does TACFIT prepare one for the unknown, and what other specific benefits does TACFIT offer to those people in those professions?
Well, I would argue that it's not unpredictable. Human conflict is a very known data point. What is unknown in that environment is, especially, say, with law enforcement personnel, what's unknown is when it will be brought. With a sport, you step on the mat, you shake hands, it's consensual agreement, okay, let's fight. We have specific rules of engagement. The only reason I succeeded in fighting wasn't because I was a better athlete. It really wasn't. I trained really hard, but the reason that I understood a fight better than many of my opponents is because I understood the context. I understood the rules of engagement. The Sun Tzu comment is that know yourself, know your enemy, and never from 100 battles will you walk away unvictorious. I say that's not as much as necessary. You need the third point, which is understand the rules of engagement. If you don't understand the context, you can climb that mountain, but you're prepared for the wrong one. So when it comes to the unknown, what you're preparing for is recovering from when you make an error. I made a lot of errors, more than I care to admit on video. But the point is, I recovered faster than my counterparts. They would push harder doing the same thing, which is the definition of insanity. They expected better results just by doing the same thing over and over and over again. I knew that you can't create good form by practicing poor form harder, because my body couldn't tolerate it. So I had to break down good form into its components that I could make repeatable. By breaking down good form, I created a known out of the unknown. And then once I could train that, gluing it all together, expanding the buffer, the safety valve for when movements deviated from the expected, and you are better prepared than the surprise that's about to happen. As good as Murphy lurks.
All right. Are there, do you want to cover any the specific benefits of TACFIT for people in this profession? Like law enforcement, military, as opposed to other conditioning systems?
Well, there is only one. There's only one benefit, and that is when things go awry, how fast can you bring back yourself into the game? There's only one. That's the only data point that needs to be evaluated. When things go right, anything will work. There are so many valid theories until you get slapped in the face. And when you're slapped in the face, then what do you do? Everybody has a plan until it hits the fan. So my point was, in evaluating the tactical athletes versus amateur athletes, I knew that it was a sum total stress load. When that stress load went over the edge, and that's what you can't determine when you look at someone biomechanically. When I look at somebody, this is in a vacuum. It's when you apply stress to the point where something gives and it turns into strain. Then how fast can you recover from that point? That's the whole point of tactical fitness that I haven't seen in any other fitness system. Maybe there are. Maybe it's happened. I don't know of anyone else that has our perspective on that. And I try and do my due diligence and buy products that come out just so I can see, is there anybody else out there? I don't like feeling alone. Right? Because I would connect with anybody else that has a common perspective and people that don't. But my point is, I haven't seen anything else like that. That's the most important point.
All right, well, after all of that, I kind of feel silly asking some of these other questions. No. But for general population people, fitness people, stay-at-home moms, etc., what does TAC-FIT offer them?
Well, you can think of it as like martial art training without ever throwing a punch. And the reason is that there has become such docility and domestication of our movement potential that our rate of pains and injuries has become hyperbolized, right? We suffer so many illnesses and injuries, not because of what we're doing, but because of the fact we're not compensating for it. We don't look at what our civilized lifestyle as a particular set of skills that we're overtraining. If we looked at any athlete and we saw them holding one isometric pose, like a fighting stance, for 8 hours a day, right? We would know, okay, we need to unload all of this crap. If we don't, as soon as they have a surprise angle, they're going to buckle and they're not prepared for that shearing force on their knee. Yet, we put people behind a desk, have them work for 8 hours, and we don't realize, okay, that's one position that needs to be compensated for. We need to address that. We still need to give them fitness benefits, but if we don't come from their point of origin, then they're not going to be prepared. So we have to look at it from not just a exercise standpoint, but a functional standpoint. Then we have to look at it from a tactical standpoint. I need to create a buffer zone for their movement, because this is what they've trained for, but I need them to be trained for when things move out of that sphere. When they step out onto the icy pavement and their leg goes out because they haven't done any rotation, right? Or when they reach overhead for the first time that day because nothing is overhead anymore. Everything is down beneath because it's convenient. Have we prepared this movement for them? Or have they lost that movement potential? Because as soon as they're outside of that range of motion, that's when the fear reactivity kicks in. So when we look at a person's lifestyle, we still have to take into consideration our genetic heritage. We need to prepare for when things deviate. From a biochemical standpoint, if I get belligerent in some suburban soccer mom's face because her son pushed my son on the soccer field, she's going to have the same arousal as if saber-toothed tigers chasing her ass down the tundra. Knowing that, she still has to process that toxicity. Road rage is another example. If she doesn't process that, it's denial that that's still going on in us biochemically. So we have to give her high intensity so that she can process those toxins. If she doesn't process those toxins, that will turn into illness and into disease. High intensity has a purpose, and that's what I mean by when we think of tactical, we think of like, oh, suddenly he's wearing a ski mask and it has nothing to do. Our nervous system, we're neurological predators. It doesn't mean we have to be predators on people. We don't have to try and sneak around the corner and jump people. That has nothing to do with understanding that our chemistry wants to fight or flee. When we hit a surprise, an error, or a mistake, that training, our training needs to help accommodate that ancestry in our organism. If we prepare it that way, then we can have a smooth life. Then everything will be stress free. When we do get hit with somebody pulling out in front of us, right, or stealing our parking space, it doesn't send us over the edge because we've had too much caffeine, because we've had too much sugar, all of the other issues that need to be addressed, like diet, right, and stimulants and all of the other artificial stuff we put in our gullet. So we have to look, when we say holistic, we have to consider holistic within the history of the evolution of this thing that we are.
Mm-hmm. Well, it
It's not
sounds
a silly question at all.
well, it sounds really familiar. Health first. Wow, now I have a speech impediment.
It's catchy, man.
Yeah.
You stay around me long enough, you be talking like that all day long.
Health first fitness.
Yeah.
That's the genius behind CST, and it's totally interwoven into TAC-FIT. And obviously these programs are not just thought to create fat loss and muscle gain. They're really well thought out. So, I know you have several different TAC-FIT programs, and we can talk about that in a few minutes. But are there any special considerations for special populations? I have some older readers, they're kind of worried about getting into TAC-FIT. They might be turned off by the hardcore mentality, or teenagers or athletes, any considerations for these special groups?
Well, the unique thing about TAC-FIT is that it's built upon the short bus of me. What I needed to do is I needed to look at elite operators and elite athletes and then reverse engineer the steps necessary in order to get up to them. Because physiologically, I couldn't handle what they were doing, but that wasn't going to stop me. My wife knows when I walk in the room and she says, "Who told you couldn't do something?" She sees it in my eyes, because I'm like, well, I'll break that down and I'll create a plan and I'll do it. Then don't tell me I can't do it. It's just it's an issue. I get it. I'm dealing with it by trying to make catharsis and helping other people. But the point is that the system is created with graduations. So you have a level that is just underneath the threshold of your fear reactivity. So you can go to that level and be challenged, but not push you into a reflex of pain or injury. And then there's another baby step. And the saying in CST is that baby steps are faster. They're not just faster, they're the only way. Because if you try and go hardcore, what I define hardcore as is going above the level that you can sustain, right? Hardcore just means that you're not prepared for actual training yet. That's my perspective. What I want to do is I want to give people challenge, but keep them in the game, so that they're constantly a question I often get is, when is this going to get easier? And I laugh. I'm like, never. It's never going to be easier. Why would you want easier? As soon as you adapt to it, you should be doing something harder. But it should never be hardcore. It should never be beyond what you're able to sustain, so that you can adapt to it and continue to progress. Everybody, wherever they are. And it's not just the aging folk. If you look at athletes are a litany of injuries. Their bodies are garbage. I get an athlete, it's like dealing with an octogenarian that's had their body busted up all their lives. I'm like, oh, man, you're 20 years old and you're in a stink of hurt. So we have to go through and we have to, unload that, refer to PT for this, refer to the chiropractor for this. I don't know if you need surgery on that. You're going to have to get multiple opinions, come back, and then after you're done with rehab, we'll start post-hab, and we'll begin. Well, I don't want to do it. I'm going to go down the street and get my ass kicked. I want to have a heart. I'm like, see ya. I hope they have a good waiver. So it's wherever you are, having the next step just above that.
All right.
And never stopping. Never, ever, ever stopping.
All right, let's talk some program design now. Why is the method of burst, recover, burst employed in your TAC-FIT programs?
If you look at it from an adaptative standpoint, if you do, I believe in long, slow duration training. I just don't believe that it should be done to exclusion of other modalities. Like, in my opinion, 4 minutes is long, slow duration training. For the energy system that our bodies have evolved to sustain, that's a long time. 4 minutes is god awful. However, the major danger for people is when they go from 0 to 100. Has their body been adequately prepared to move suddenly when absolutely cold? We often don't have a chance to warm up before a crisis. And when we say a crisis, it could be, again, the road rage mentality, or someone pulls out in front of you, and you, right? How fast do you recover from that? That's what we're being prepared for. I love running, but I have never had to chase a man 26 miles. I've never had to run that long in my life because I have a car, right? Mm-hmm. I fly in planes. This is not ancient Greece. So I enjoy doing that for dynamic relaxation, but from a fitness standpoint, there's no danger for me that I have to sustain that activity. What the danger is, I have to suddenly move very fast. Right? I have to suddenly change directions. I step out into the curb because I'm used to like balmy Bellingham and people stop a block away, and I step into lawn and people are hitting the accelerator because I didn't see him coming. I have to move very quickly, right? Or my 5-year-old boy, brilliant kid, love that kid, no awareness. He absolutely has no fear, and that scares the hell out of me. So when I have to suddenly grab him because he puts his head through the fence, right, and there's a bull coming, and I only say that because it's a true story, and I go to grab him very quickly, my being able to move and do that without blowing out my lower back, am I being able to do that without hurting my neck? I actually have to worry about that because of the injuries I sustained as an athlete. So burst, recover, burst, how fast can I move to 100 miles an hour and recover from it without illness or injury or deleterious effects on my body, like aches and pains that will stop me from being able to do my job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, is it possible to integrate a TAC-FIT program into an existing exercise routine for supplementary training? And if so, how would you recommend doing this?
Most people do. I don't. There are an increasing number of people that are opening TAC-FIT gyms around the world. But most people in this transitionary period to understanding that tactical fitness isn't I don't want to say it's not a trademark name. It is, but it's not a product. It's a product too, but it's a discipline, right? But most people right now are integrating it into their box. You know, at a health club, you have a separate room. This is the TAC-FIT gym. Or you have it on the class schedule. This is the TAC-FIT class. Or at home, you have I'm going to be doing this for the next 28 days. And then I'm going to cycle out of that. And I'm going to do a running and biking phase. Right? I'm going to cycle out of that. And then it's springtime, so I'm going to be heading out in the kayak. Right? I'm going to cycle out of that. And then it's summer, time for beach volleyball. Right, and then there are different activities. For me, fitness is a springboard to do the things I want to do. Right, if you look at it from a sports specific perspective, I'm training for a particular skill set. From a tactical fitness perspective, I'm training for life. I have fitness for a purpose, and my life is to be able to respond to the situations I'm presented with. Volleyball is a very difficult sport. I happen to enjoy it. I'm a pancake. I admit it. So, but if you have to suddenly turn and leap, your joints need to be prepared for that. If you hit the sand and plow underneath like a cow catcher, like I do all the time, because gravity loves me, then I need to be prepared for that. So, I cycle through my workouts. People ask me, well, are you doing the program as prescribed? No. My events now that I've finally retired, I promise, absolutely, I'm retiring this time.
I don't know if I believe you yet, but
pulling out a Brett Favre. So, yeah, now that I've retired, my events that I'm preparing for are the seminars that I present. You know, because I have to travel, so I have to factor in all that. I have the time zone I have then a 14-hour day, right? And then to deal with my staff who are always giving me crap for everything. And all of that stress load from being around them, those that
There's Coach Joe Wilson over here, Bill Kapinski, and Matt, right? Matt, what's your last name, Matt?
Wiswessler?
Matt Wiswessler. There we go. You got it on camera, folks.
So, where are we? What city?
You were saying
we're
how
in New
awesome
York.
your staff is.
And
Yeah, you love us
no.
all.
So, I have jet lag, and it's only 3 hours coming up to New York, and it doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but I mean, all of that needs to be factored in, and then you have multiple hours and multiple surprises, and those are my events, right? So I have to be prepared for those, and I have to cycle my training so that it works up to peaks at those events. You know, I plan my recovery phase for right before I'm about to depart. So I peak way before. I peak a week before, so that I can recover and actually perform then. I know what my lifestyle is, and that's where we have to organize our fitness.
Right. All right, kind of in the same vein, TAC-FIT is primarily meant to be used with the 4x7 protocol that waves intensity over 7 consecutive 4-day splits. Are there ways of modifying the 4x7 wave for scheduling difficulties, or are there other schedules that work? You know, there's the week-long.
Well, you can start. The first thing that you can do is the first step is taking a 3-ring approach to the workout, to actually doing a specific warm-up and a specific cool-down. If you do that, you're going to get 100% of the benefits out of TAC-FIT, or CST in this case, because it's a CST formula. It's not necessarily TAC-FIT specific. It's just that TAC-FIT has turnkey, follow along, do this warm-up. If you just do this, if you don't do this, you have no excuse, because you've been given everything. But with CST, it gives you the formula to try and figure that out, right? And with CST products that are out there, it gives you examples of how to do it. So that's the first step. The second step is knowing what your recovery is. In order to know what your recovery is, then let's say I have time to exercise 3 days a week. You can exercise every day. You just don't know how to exercise every day, and you don't realize that the goal of exercise is to have more energy, not less. But most people think it's I have to work out and be destroyed.
Preach it. Preach it.
Right. I don't want to be destroyed. I want to feel fantastic, especially at my age. So the next step is I need to know how to recover. If I have 3 days that week, then I'm going to do the proper warm up and cool down, and then sometime throughout that week I'm going to do one long, heavy, deep stretching sweat, so that I feel like my body's been. And that's very difficult for people, because if I'm at the gym or I've taken the time to exercise, I want to work out. Why the hell do I want to stretch? Yeah, I come here and just stretch out, and if they do stretch out, it's going to. Okay, now what? But I mean, you should spend an hour to 2 hours just sitting there and pulling on it, and making sure that everything has been unloaded. It should be a long, thorough session. That's the next step. And then from that point, then people should start looking at, okay, over 7 days. Okay, so I have my work week. How can I plug this in? And there's a 7-day suggestion of do it this way. And you can add more recovery at any time. You can add more recovery work. Well, what if I want to do more mobility every day? Do it. You just can't. You can't do You can't try and do high intensity more often, because then you're eating into the recovery cycle. And then ultimately, if they go fully compliant, they get down to the 4-day cycle. I don't necessarily do the 4-day cycle myself anymore. Oh,
you heard it here, folks.
Okay. And the reason for that is because high intensity for me might take longer for me to recover. I may do a 5-day cycle because I hit high intensity. I hit it, and it hurts, and it's awful. It took me about 2 honest years to feel a 10. And I was already an athlete, and I hadn't known it. My coach surprised me. And it wasn't the puke factor, right? It's to be able to hit high intensity without being vomitous. So the goal of the scheduling isn't to follow the schedule. It's to re-experience the internal recovery cycle. Once you turn your awareness back into what's going on in my body truly, rather than what I think is going on, then you're autonomous. Then you create your own schedule. It's just that people do it too often, and they do it too early, they try and say, well, this is what I should do. No, it's not what you should do. It's what you are doing. What is actually going on? And they stop consulting with others. I've been doing this for a very long time, and I still get an objective opinion. Like, this is where I am. What do you think? And then they'll go measure me, and no, Scott, that's really, no, you're pushing it again. You gotta tune it down. Or, you know, I have one of my close friends look at my schedule, and he's, I think you could do more work in there. I mean, you don't hold back that much. Like, my wife likes to kick me in the ass, and she's like, you know, you can handle this. Don't be too tentative. You need to push it. I mean, you're gonna be going as these 20-somethings. Go kick their ass. Okay.
Whatever you say.
Yeah, she's still tougher than I am.
All right, well, we only got time for a couple more, so just kind of to point people in a direction that they can take action on. You know, you have a lot of different TAC-FIT products to choose from, each one with a different and unique focus. How would you guide someone who's looking just to get started, to jump in and, you know, experience it for the first time?
Well, I'll say something a bit sacrilegious. I'll say, it doesn't matter what you do, it matters what you're motivated to do. So the thing that excites you the most, regardless of which coach it comes from, do that thing and do it intelligently. We vet the people that are involved in our organization very, very, very thoroughly, even though, you know, obviously everybody makes mistakes. But if there's a product that's supported by RMAX, it's an intelligent product. It's going to keep you safe. So it doesn't matter if it's from Joe Wilson or from Ryan Hurst or from me. It doesn't. Whoever presents the product, and if that particular product excites you, do that product. All right. And just follow it, right? Don't. Before you've mastered the basics, anything that you think is a cool variation or an alternative, or it may sound like a great idea, but just follow the program as prescribed to its end. Do it 2 or 3 times, and then start to modify it, and come up with your cool ideas. Because I'm the first person like, well, maybe if we did it this way, just do it, be fully compliant, and then go back, and then you'll understand the context of it. Because the journey always looks different at the end than when you started, and then you can see the landscape.
All right, so just 2 real quick ones. You know, I think every TAC-FIT program is appropriate for people with fat loss goals, but if there was one that you would recommend as like the best program for somebody who specifically wanted to lose weight, which one would you tell them, or which few would you tell them to take a look at?
The one that they're going to do.
All right, same answer.
I'm sorry.
No, that's fine. All right, well,
I'm trying to be aloof, man. Nope. It's the one that they do.
All right. And like I said, I think they're all appropriate for fat loss and muscle gain in general, health and fitness benefits, so I don't think anybody could really go wrong. All right, last question. If the whole world were your audience for just a moment, what would you want them to know about TAC-FIT?
Oh, nothing more. No, nothing. Nothing.
The whole world, Scott.
Nothing more. All right. I mean, because I don't stress about the whole world, because it's only ever going to be one client, right? I'm only ever speaking to one individual. I'm never speaking to the whole world. So with one particular person, do the thing that you're going to do sustainably, do it intelligently, do it incrementally, and never, ever, ever, ever stop. So those are all just the basic tenets to TAC-FIT. I don't care. The whole world doesn't pressure me. I have to deal with these guys.
Yeah, that's a hard job. All right. Well, thank you very much, Scott.
Thanks, John.
It was
I really
a pleasure.
appreciate it. And I really enjoy your audience and your blog. And if there is any way that, you know, our staff can help support any questions or any interest points, just ask them on your blog, right? And let us know, and we'll come over and we'll get a response.
Absolutely, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.